Welcome to This Is How We Create, a show that digs deeper into the creative life of contemporary artists of color. Discover what feeds their creativity and how they found or are finding their artistic voice. Through these intimate and candid conversations, you'll gain insights into the lives of creative professionals of color that are hard to find anywhere else.
Hey friend, welcome back to This Is How We Create. My name is Martine Severin, your host. So today we are going to be talking about sales. And I know that for most people, for most artists, or most creatives, talking about sales make us feel a little funny. It's as if we are used car salesmen. And when we think about sales, but I want to tell you today this story about Tamika. So my family and we were heading to Niagara Falls for a little holiday over the break last October. We stopped for lunch at this really wonderful and cute little cafe in Detroit. And what I've come to find is that in some ways I am getting recognized by my voice, which is a little weird. So here comes Tamika, who is a figurative artist, and she's talking about her work. She talked about how she posts religiously on Instagram because, well, that's what you're supposed to do. She keeps on top of her mailing list and she is listing her work on 3 different online places. But she's not getting any bites and she's not selling her work. She explained that she spent so much money at an art fair and she sold 2 small pieces of a print series. And after all of her expenses came in, she had a negative $650 in expenses. And here's the thing, she could have stayed home, ordered takeout, and come ahead. Does this all sound familiar to you? Essentially, Tamika was experiencing what I call the visibility to sales paradox. It's a frustrating cycle where your work gets likes, but your invoices and crickets. It's like the equivalent of having 1,000 matches on a dating app, but 0 actual dates. But here's the truth. When it comes to selling your creative work, it's challenging for everyone. But really, it has to do with not knowing about sales. Now, we know about color theory and we know about composition, but there is a huge number of really talented artists who are out there. And they all have the same preparation as you. And sometimes our ability to sell our work is like going to a fight with a paintbrush. But here's what changed everything for Tamika. And it wasn't a new Instagram filter or the new algorithm hack. It was learning about sales. And so one of the best things I did was a sales course with Maria Bayer called the Irresistible Selling Course. And at the time, I was doing wedding photography. And I came across Maria and some other photographers who were talking about sales. And I was really resistant to taking this class because I was just like, I don't want to be like a used car salesman. But here's what we get wrong about sales. It's really about knowing how to pitch your work. It's knowing how to listen to your customers, how to listen to your clients, how to tease out all of the things that they're looking for and how you can be a problem solver for them by solving their pain points and addressing their pain points. And in talking with Tamika about what I learned from Maria's class, as well as what I learned from interviewing so many different artists, over 100 artists who've been on the podcast, I'll share with you some strategies about sales. And these strategies might transform how you sell your creative work without losing your soul. Now, I've recorded this podcast episode 3 times already. And the first time I recorded it, I thought, and I came up with like a script and I was reading the script and I was thinking, oh, this all seems really performative. And it's felt like I was talking about how to sell from a really masculine energy, like a bro man energy. When I sell, that's not what I do. Instead, what I do is I pay attention to what people are telling me. And I pay attention to where my clients are going to be. And I pay attention to people who need my work, right? So there are a lot of different ways that you as an artist can sell your work. The first and easiest way, particularly if you deal with portraiture, is to well, is to go to galleries, but to go to galleries and find galleries that represent other artists that create work that's similar enough to yours, but also within your price point. So you're not going to go to New York and go to the, I don't know, the Jack Shaman gallery and say that, yes, well, you represented such and such artists and my work is similar. I want you to represent me. Well, that might not work for you, my friend, because their artists' work are selling for about, $300,000. Is your work going to sell for that much? So you really have to take into consideration as to where you will be a good fit, as well as where you will add value to a gallery. So how do you find these galleries? Well, go to art shows. We have Chicago Expo that's coming up. Wherever it is that you are, go to either art shows or start visiting galleries. Go to see what are they showing and just ask questions. Set up an interview with them. Not an interview, but an informational interview where you just go and you sit or you stalk people on Instagram, see what they're into and chat with them. But I'll tell you what's even more important, and this is going to get to our second strategy. Our second strategy has all to do with your community. What is your community doing? What are the artists who are in your area doing? Where are they listing their work and how are they succeeding? Now, sometimes we think that we're in direct competition with each other, but that's not necessarily the case, right? So we could meet up and we could share best practices, but it doesn't mean that we have to, show the good china, if you will, right? We want to be able to find artists that are similar to us. And if we can't find these artists within our own little town, so I live in Chicago and I have a network of photographers who are in Chicago. And while I deal with lifestyle, there are photographers who deal in food or photographers who work with kids or photographers who work in stills. That is, they take photos of products. We're all doing different work, but we're not necessarily in competition with each other because we're all photographers. A client who wants a photographer to photograph pizza isn't going to ask me to photograph it because pizza, if you didn't know, is its own thing, right? But what you might want to do, but a network that's in another city. I have a really wonderful friend who lives in Tennessee. She's in Nashville and she's a photographer. We wouldn't necessarily be hired for the same thing, right? She does a lot of celebrity work. And actually, she's been on the podcast. Her name is Diana King. She is like my photography bestie. I love her. Check out her work and check out her episode. I'll put it in the show notes. And so Diana and I, we talk a lot and we exchange a lot of different best practices. And we can do that because she lives in Nashville, Tennessee, but then she does a lot of work in LA. She does a lot of work for People magazines, a Hollywood Reporter. So in cases like that, like she and I can exchange information, but we're not necessarily going to compete. But I could also tell her who are the agencies that have hired me. And I think that she probably would be a really great fit for some of the work that they're looking for. And why is that? Well, because we're not going to be in competition, but we are each other's allies and we're each other's cheerleaders. And where I think that this agency that I sent her to, they would really benefit from using her, but I wouldn't necessarily lose out. Now, the other thing that also happens is that your network might refer you for different things. So if you live, let's say in Houston, maybe you might create a network of people who live in Chicago, so that you can meet and share best practices. And how do you find these people? You're saying, Martine, this sounds ridiculous. I live in Texas and you want me to get in touch with Chicago people. Well, we're all on Instagram. We all can see our work. So you just need to use that hashtag and get to work and find people who are in your niche, but who are likely, you might not likely live in the same area. They might be in London, for example, but you will be a value add. Because here is the thing, your network is going to be so important. They're the ones who are going to refer you, or if a client comes, they're the ones who are going to be sending you work. So first we talked about galleries, then we talked about your network. Third, let's talk about cultivating an audience and cultivating a set of collectors. One of the things that we don't necessarily think about is that sometimes we want to be known worldwide for our work, but think about the fact that you can be known really well in your neck of the woods. What would happen if you held 3 open houses, open studios, if you will, a year? We have Danielle Chuchintharanan, who was, I believe, on episode 5, who came in. The way I came across our next door neighbor, said, hey, do you want to go check out this open studio from this ceramicist who is like local? She lives literally less than 15 minutes away from me. So I go to Danielle's open studio. Why is this woman's work so amazing? Her work is the bomb. So much so that I invited her to the podcast, and I've since purchased her work, and I'm like the hugest fan. And not only does Danielle regularly have an open house, and everyone looks forward to this open house because she serves really yummy drinks and people mill around and talk with each other, and they leave with the most wonderful and the most beautiful ceramics. Danielle has these open houses. Do you know what else she does? She collaborates with like-minded businesses in the area. She makes ceramics, so she makes plates. So her work is often purchased and used in local restaurants. She collaborates with different businesses that serve food. So, food, ceramics usually go hand in hand. And so she tends to collaborate over and over with different businesses in her area. So the same thing for you. Let's say if you're not selling a physical good, let's say you're a graphic artist, that's another thing that you could do. You could collaborate with the businesses that are around your area and offer your services up to them. Do they need a new logo? Do they need new assets for their website? Whatever it is, go find the work. Don't necessarily wait for the work to find you. In the case that you're listening to this and you're a prop stylist, one of my favorite prop stylists in Chicago hosts a yard sale twice a year. Why do I always go to this yard sale and I always come home with stuff? That's because it's so good. And she's a prop stylist. So if you've ever worked with a prop stylist, they are so talented. Oh my goodness. They always tend to find these just really amazing pieces. But this just means that, like, what is available in your neighborhood, in your city, and make connections, because we always think that we have to start big, right? Like, I want to be known by everybody in the world. Well, start in your own neck of the woods. Start there, get to know the people, make connections, and then grow outwards. We talked about galleries. We talked about creating your own network. And then we also talked about starting small in terms of investing in your neighborhood. The next thing I want to talk about is the sales process. Now, we tend to think about sales in terms of talking about all the things that you do and all the benefits of your work. Well, yes, and what's really important is for you to understand what problem you are solving. I'm going to go back to Tamika. Tamika is a painter. The problem that she was solving is creating really beautiful work. And Speaking of beautiful work, wait a minute. I'm just going to grab a piece from Ayanna George, who came on the podcast to share with you. I hope that you're watching this YouTube video because look at this. Isn't this beautiful? So for me, what was really important, the problem that I wanted solved is I wanted really beautiful art, really beautiful portraits and work by Black artists of brown people in my house because I wanted to give it life, and I want someone who comes in to know, yes, a Black person lives in this house. So let me put this back, then I'll come back and talk to you. The other thing I wanted was work that would make me smile, work that would make me feel good each time I passed by it. And I wanted to know the person whose work I was collecting. When you are selling, the most important part of the sales process is figuring out someone's pain point. What is it that they're struggling with? And if this isn't clear to you yet, let me talk to you about how I would talk to the clients, the wedding clients that I would have. And I do the exact same thing with clients who hire me to do projects where the budget is hundreds and thousands of dollars. Okay, so here we go. When I had a wedding client and we would sit across from each other, I would thank them for finding me and for reaching out to me. I would definitely ask where they found me because that's an important part of the sales process because you need to know where people are finding you because then you want to double down on the places where people are finding you and you want to invest in those places. So the second thing that I always mentioned is I talked about who I was and the kind of work that I do, right? Third, I ask, what did you like about my work? And so often they will tell you, and you better have a pen and pencil ready. You want to write down what people are saying about your work because what's important is that you are going to use that information and you are going to code that information. We're going to get to that point. So when they talk about your work and what they like, there is no point in writing long sentences. What you want to write down are basically nouns, adjectives, verbs. What are they saying? So they might say, Martine, I like your work because the people look like they're real people and they're having a lot of fun and they look relaxed and they don't look posed because nobody really likes photos that look, well, some people don't like photos that look posed. So that's the second question I would ask them. The third question I would ask them is this. So when you are thinking about your wedding day, and let's say we're going forward 10 years, and you're looking at your wedding album, what do you want to be feeling or how do you want to be feeling? And so then what they're going to do is they're going to tell you how they want to be feeling. And this is a really important point. And why is this important? Because they're going to tell you what they want out of their wedding day. So you're going to write all those things down. So then what you want to say is tell them a little bit more about you and how you understand what it is that they're looking for. And as they're talking to you about what they're looking for, you want to be able to write down, you want to be able to address their pain points. Their pain points is that they fear that their wedding photos are going to look fake. Their pain point is that they want photos that they're actually going to love. They don't want it to look really posed. They don't want it to look like them. They don't want it to look like some version of them that's unrealistic. And then they're going to tell you some of the things that they want to remember. It might be that they want to remember their first kiss. It might be that they want to remember laughter. They might be that they want to remember all the people who've come together to really enjoy their wedding day. So these are the things that you're going to talk about when you say why you think you are a good fit for them. You're going to be a good fit for them because one, you're going to take photos where they feel and they look like themselves. You're going to take photos of the mother and the father and the family members smiling and crying as they walk down the aisle, and as they're enjoying their first kiss, you want to give it back to them. You want to give it back to your client in terms of the things that they're expecting. Now, this is where there's a clear line between what you offer as well as what a creepy car salesperson would offer. And that is, you have to be real. You can't be a jerk. You can't be weird. You have to be real. And if there is not a match between what you are, what your expertise is and what they want, you have to let them know. And I know that sometimes we just need the money and we just need to go ahead and do the job. And if that's the case, you need to deliver what it is that they need, regardless of your style. And here's the thing, like, we all, as artists, we have our specific style. And if people come to you, you're sharing your personal style and they know what they're getting into, you give them what they want and what they're looking for. And it's important because, it's their wedding day. And then we'll get to how this transfers to the commercial side in just a little bit. So stick with me. But then sometimes too, this conversation, as you're having it, it will tell you whether or not the two of you are a good fit. There has to be goodness of fit when you are looking for a job. Even if you really, really need the money, here's the thing. If you take something that is not a really great fit, it's never good, y'all. It's just never good. I'll give you an example where I did the exact same thing and it was just not a really great experience. I really needed the money at this point, and this bride came in, and it was very evident to me that we were not a good fit. I knew that she would like my photos, only because she did not want an artist. She just wanted photos. And so this woman had a shot list that was like unlike any shot list I've ever seen as a wedding photographer. But you know what? No problem. No problem, because I was going to do the work. I didn't enjoy myself. And what she just wanted was an automaton who just took photos, and I didn't get a chance to be an artist. But even in cases like that, even if the client wants things that are very, very really specific, you have to go in there and you have to give the client what they want. But you could also give the client what they didn't know they wanted. You give the client what they didn't know they needed, nor they wanted. And that happens over and over again in the commercial sense. So in the commercial sense, essentially what I do is the exact same, except that the client changes, right? So instead of a wedding client, it might be, I'll give you an example. It's a job I completed recently. You didn't know this, but my work is mainly with banks. Who knew? I didn't set out to work primarily with banks, but there you go. I've worked with the major banks, except for Chase. I haven't worked with Chase yet. In this one specific bank, I'll tell you what I did with them. So I'm talking with the creative director, and I basically asked that person the same things that I just told you. Where did you find my information? And in general, you could do that in email as well. I asked them what they were looking for and why they felt that I was a photographer who could best deliver the work. And, they told me, and this was in a meeting over Zoom. And the third thing that we talked about is what the client was looking for. So the creative director is working at an ad agency, and they're representing a client. So they told me what the client was looking for. And not only did they tell you what the client is looking for, they share a brief. They share exactly some of the images that the client was looking for. And I knew that this was going to be a pretty easy job. And the reason for that is, in terms of the images from the brief that they shared, they were all images that I had created. They were images from my website. So already that's an in. So I knew that was going to be great because they were looking for an artist, and I knew I could deliver what it is that they were looking for. I asked them, well, when this concludes, what kind of image do you think that the client would see that would make them feel that they were really glad that they invested their money in this photo shoot? And they would tell me. And so then when you're recapping and when you're sending in your, what they call a treatment, but treatment is essentially a way of saying a proposal in the photography space, in the commercial photography space. So when I sent the treatment, I essentially had all of those keywords that they were saying that I then cobbled together and then was able to create a really persuasive paragraph in terms of talking about why I was the right photographer for the job. And it all worked out because I did end up getting the job. The most important part of the sales process is we talked about listening. Listening is really important. Hearing between what they say and what they really want. And then knowing when to hush. You have to know when to be quiet. You have to know to let them talk. Don't interrupt them. Let them talk because they're going to tell you what they need. So in the same case too, when you are having an open studio and you're chatting with people and you have lots of people who are coming through, and even if it is 10 people, ask them questions about what they think about your work. What do they like about your work? They're going to tell you. And you're going to keep in mind the words that repeat over and over and over again, because the things that they say over and over and over again are going to be the things that attract people to your work or what makes your work attractive to them. And you then can use that to amend some of the copy that you have on your website so that with each iteration of putting yourself out there, of meeting with gallery owners, of meeting with prospective clients, then you're going to have data, literal data, because you're keeping track of what people are saying to you. Now, if there are people who are like saying kind of one-off things, we want to think about the bell curve. We want to focus here in the middle. And those are the words that we want to use. Now, if you are being hired by a demographic that you're not too pleased with and you want to move to the other side of the bell curve, right? So this side is where most of the data is coming from. But if you want to be like legendary and you want to be the person who stands out, then this side might be what you concentrate on. So friends, this is all to say that sales really doesn't have to be icky. I can put Maria Bayer's link to her course in the show notes for this episode. But I also want to say, like, Maria isn't paying me for this. She doesn't know I'm doing this. But I found that her course was really instrumental. And that's because I went in thinking sales was going to be one thing, but really it was all about psychology. It was all about learning how to differentiate yourself from other artists that are out there and how to figure out what your value proposition is in terms of what's your special sauce. Maria's course or any sales course is going to help you do that. Be careful as you're going through a sales course, because what you want to make sure that you're doing is you want to find somebody who's teaching and you want to find an approach to sales that fits well with your personality and what you're looking for. Because the last thing you want to do is to sell in a way that just really goes against your values. That's all I have today. I'm thinking maybe I will no, I think I'm going to stick with this episode mainly because I think that it's a lot, it's from the heart. This is how I sell. And oh, I just came up with one thing. So another secret to sales, because you want data, you want to understand people's pain points, and then you want to solve their pain points, and you want to talk about benefits, right? So the whole thing about sales is benefits, benefits, benefits. So you want to talk about benefits. And then what you want to do is if people aren't answering your questions, the last piece of a sentence or statement that they say, you could pose it back to them. You might say something like, I really like your work. And then you could use that phrase and bring it back to them. You could say, you really like my work? If you're having a conversation with someone and you repeat the last sentence that they say to you in terms of a question, I want you to try this. They're automatically going to then clarify. What's one other thing? Yeah.
You ready, baby?
I have to go, everybody. I'm going away on a trip, a business trip. So I just thought I would come here and share with you some of the tips I learned in sales and do it in a really like organic way rather than it being too scripted. But I hope that this episode really helped. If you want me to post the original episode, let me know. I might be able to do that as well. I still have it. I recorded it last week. Alrighty. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of This Is How We Create, please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast listening app. The ratings are so important to helping other people just like you find the podcast and to learn more about creatives of color and how they are living their artistic life. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter, Creative Matters, on Substack. You'll find the link in the show notes. You can think of Creative Matters like a companion to the podcast where we just dig a little bit deeper in terms of what it means to live a creative life. And I apply lessons learned across seasons, all in the service of talking about creativity and how to live a stronger creative life. Looking forward to seeing you there.